Drunk Erin was still lying flat, but when she heard Tae-san's words, she turned around and laughed. Ha, it's really Tae-san, we can't let that vixen get away. Yerin looks down on boys very much. Senior Lee Yerin heard that she was being touched, so she harshly said back. Hey Senior Erin, why are you a fox spirit? I was the one who nicknamed you Fluffy Baby. Erin responded with an innocent face, but her words were no less sharp. Ah, that's right, a rose with a thorny body. After that, he lay down flat on his mouth and kept staring. He was probably too drunk to control himself. Don't pay attention to Tae-san. He's the other half of Yuri's sister's friend, if compared to Yuri. He would be better than Yuri, can't even get a corner. When Senior Lee Yerin heard the mention of Yuri, her eyes widened. Senior Yuri's face looked confused, as if she wanted to justify everything is wrong. It's true that the power of beer is amazing, but only when drunk do we dare to tell all our secrets. Erin is the same, she used alcohol to express her feelings. If it weren't for Yuri then I would, San is already mine. Ah, they had a very happy night. The two guys sitting next to him heard Erin speak and immediately became suspicious. Their round eyes closed straight at Tae-san. Could it be that day? And Tae-san was embarrassed, so he smiled shyly, covered his face and mouth, then denied it. No, that's not it, she was too drunk so I just took her home. Nothing happened, so don't look at me like that, it's true. To dispel the tense atmosphere, Tae-san picked up a cup of wine and poured it for everyone. What are you doing? The wine cup is still empty, let's drink until we die today. Not long after receiving this guest, another guest came in from outside the door. Hey, that's a girl's voice, I don't know who it is this time. Everyone turned to look and it turned out that she was also a student at the school, the female lead in the love play of the business department. When everyone saw this beautiful girl here, they all admired. Oh, is it you, Julia, just now? While Tae-san looked blankly, not understanding what this girl was here for. The girl came closer and greeted everyone. Hello, I am IRA, Class 8, Business Department. Tae-san looked at this pure and beautiful girl without even blinking an eye and kept praising you. You are really good because preparing for the competition has spent so much sweat and tears all week, it's all gone up in smoke again. But why does hearing his compliments sound so strange? It's like trying to provoke and touch someone's pain. You heard it and got mad and shouted at Tae-san, you don't know how much effort I had to put in for this performance. In any case, why use a girl group? This is just a simple competition between university students, not a place for capitalism to destroy like that. No one recognizes this performance. This is cheating, so the girl came here not because she wanted to join the party or have a fun chat, but to vent all her anger and frustration. She put in a lot of sweat and effort to set up a unique performance with the aim of receiving the most love and bringing home the highest award, but who would have thought that Tae-san would be more skilled and ruin everything for her, while Tae-san could only sit silently and look at her. I cursed him enough before speaking again. He thought it was true that girls are different. Then he turned away and responded to Yura's curses. This is something I judge and make a decision on myself. This is just an investment with the capital I have. Tae-san turned to look straight at Yura and asked, so the expensive dress and eye-catching accessories that you used were supported by the business department? Men and boys can't ignore it. I think gender discrimination is one of the things that need to be broken. Yura heard Tae-san's sharp words and couldn't refute anything. She could only accept but also had to say a few threats to save her reputation. She shouted at Tae-san, okay, today I lost, but I will, there is no next time. Senior Yuran, standing next to her, heard Yura speak and felt itchy in her ears and mouth. So she sat up and told her a few words. Hey, isn't it a bit too much for you to come here and talk like that in the middle of the law department's banquet, new student of the business department? Yura looked straight into Yuran's eyes and lowered her voice. Don't be so tense, I don't like that style. Suddenly Yura's attitude changed 180 degrees and turned to face Tae-san, smiling happily. Jang Tae-san, let's go have a drink next time. I have a feeling we'll see each other often in the future. After hearing that, Yuran was so disappointed that he stood there frozen. Yura turned away and said loudly inside, I'll come find Jang Tae-san when school starts. The scene changes to a snowy area. Two blonde girls are happily skiing together and the person behind them screams a get away or you might die. And outside, Tae-san and department head Huang were watching everyone playing and talking. The department head looked at the two girls in front and smiled and said they still look like children. Tae-san also looked at them attentively and replied, they have had a hard time lately. Right before debuting, they had to work hard to be where they are today, and to be able to survive after debuting, they also had to work crazy hard. Head of department Huang turned to look at Tae-san. In this industry the competition is much more than other industries. Tae-san put that work aside and told manager Huang that I have booked a place to stay, everyone should rest well and leave tomorrow. Tromfan Huang finished listening and felt extremely grateful to Tae-san. Thank you, you did all the things the company couldn't do. Then he gently whispered to Tae-san, do you like Seo-rang? Tae-san just smiled and hesitantly said, she is cute but also very strong. Tromfan found it funny, this answer is not suitable for his age at all. But are you really only 20 years old? Tae-san also smiled happily and said, that's true. But why is the tone so familiar? It feels like I'm talking to my fellow soldiers. Two people who were skiing called out and asked Tae-san and manager Huang, aren't you guys preparing for the second album? Huang looked back and answered them, of course the second album had to be done, but the company refused to invest. Tae-san heard about the temporary suspension of investment and asked manager Huang, why is that? Manager Huang sadly lowered his head and said, I also found it very strange. It seemed like the director and the boss were planning something. I couldn't guess. Tae-san didn't understand and asked again, isn't the FOB's income quite good? Huang stood with his arms crossed and said thoughtfully, we also thought the same, but the big guys didn't see it that way. The people who were crushed in the past were buried deep under. Tae-san stood and thought for a while then spoke, so if department manager Huang became the owner? That probably wouldn't happen, right? The department manager heard that his name was involved in this case and changed his tone. What? I am different from them. Tae-san continued to pry his curiosity about what was different, but manager Huang said that I would eat whatever they eat, and we have to live together to be able to stay for a long time. In the past, there were very few people left to help the company make a lot of money, and at that time they were all cursed very badly. Tae-san heard the thoughts in his head. I only teased him a little, but his answer was impressive. Manager Huang still didn't know that right now he was interviewing for me. He continued talking, not knowing. Haven't you heard that the company has been sold? When manager Huang heard this news, he was stunned. This news was like lightning hitting his ears. What are you talking about? Why did you sell the company? When manager Huang heard this news, he was startled and stunned. This news was like lightning hitting his ears. What are you talking about? Why did you sell the company? Up on the ski rink, everyone still didn't seem to know anything, so they were still having fun. Everyone get out of the way, get out of the way. Manager Huang gently said gently. Actually, I heard that there is a new equity investor in the company. Do you know who that investor is? Tae-san didn't want to open the game yet to let manager Huang know, so he created a distraction. If the company was sold, wouldn't everyone be affected? After all, it's just starting to get popular now. Manager Huang's expression was already very serious. He told Tae-san firmly. I will try to go to my wife's house and kneel down to ask. That's right, the kids are very talented. As long as I become the boss, I will definitely protect the children. In 2020, KNB Entertainment has become a company aimed at artists, because the director and representatives are all scoundrels. The name is not yet known to many people, so perhaps manager Huang will buy it back to the company. The two of them looked at the soon-to-be famous artists who were skiing and said to those puppies that I would be responsible for their lives in the future. When they heard that, they also responded with humor, yes, puppies, indeed, the manager is the best. Everyone come here quickly, let's play. Scene changes to the walking street. Huang Dae and Tae-san were chatting on the way home. He shyly asked, Huang Dae, how long has it been since we last came here? Huang Dae kindly asked about Tae-san, but are you okay now? Didn't you drink a lot of alcohol yesterday? Tae-san was embarrassed and didn't know how to say the right thing to say, scratching his head and answering hesitantly, yes, it's okay, I'm not tired. Huang Dae felt reassured when he heard that. Yes, he looked extremely healthy. Huang Dae turned to see Tae-san smiling and silently smiling. She seemed surprised and didn't understand why he was smiling. Tae-san said softly because he felt grateful to Yuri. The girl who heard that she was grateful was extremely surprised that it was her. Tae-san raised his hand in front of his face and turned Yuri, because she was giving strength to the man's shoulders. Yuri still didn't understand what was going on. Look, thanks to you, hasn't my value in the eyes of others increased? Tae-san pointed his hand towards Yuri. Laughing happily, she told me to give her the bag. Help her carry it. Yuri heard it and felt a little embarrassed. Her face turned red. But she still picked up the bag and gave it to Tae-san. Suddenly, she was startled and her pure eyes widened as she looked at Tae-san. Tae-san couldn't wait any longer and had to take this opportunity to express his feelings for Yuri. He took this opportunity to hold Yuri's hand tightly. To erase the awkward atmosphere, Tae-san told Yuri why her hands were so cold. Tae-san and Yuri walked into a luxury restaurant. Tae-san's status and reputation were so terrible that the director had to come out to say hello. It's an honor to meet you. I'm director Yang Deok Hwang. Please come inside, it's cold outside. Tae-san told the director, I want to meet somewhere quiet. The blue shirt guy asked Tae-san, do you think this place is okay? You can count on it. Tae-san's hand still held Yuri's hand tightly but was afraid that she wouldn't feel comfortable, so he said, if you feel uncomfortable, you can let go of your hand. It might help you get more attention, huh? Yuri heard Tae-san's harsh and arrogant words and was stunned. What did you say? Tae-san, you're a playboy, right? Tae-san's face lit up without any shame and he asked, yes, how are you? Yuri was no longer calm enough to talk gently to Tae-san like before. She shouted, that's what Aaron said, a second-year fox in the law department. I heard that girl really likes you too. And the new business student too. I heard she is also very curious about you. Tae-san blatantly defended again, Yuri's sister. I think everyone is free to have their own concerns, Yuri hesitantly said. Although that's true, but... Tae-san continued it, to protect himself, and maybe Senior Aaron was just drunk and spoke his heart out, saying that he should leave Yuri and go on a date with her. After listening to Yuri, her face turned pale, not knowing who was telling the truth and who was being sincere. Did Aaron say that? Tae-san was invaded and presented a lesson to his seniors. Hoa just stood still there, but there were many things going there, it wasn't her fault. Right, Yuri also understood that. Yuri heard it and thought it made sense but still had doubts. That's true, but still. Not giving Yuri a chance to get back at him, he continued to justify. Just like she didn't want others to say she was flirtatious, so men also didn't want to hear those words at all. Yuri regained her composure and spoke gently to Tae-san. Even though we are close to each other, we should still maintain basic politeness. But you really are like a playboy. Suddenly there was a phone call. Tae-san just called the other end of the line and quickly said, "Hey Tae-san, it's a big deal." I don't know what they said, I just saw Tae-san's expression was very serious, he seemed extremely worried and then he replied with a heavy yes. The security here is very strict, the entrance is strictly guarded by a staff and there is no CCTV. You can rest assured. The guy in the blue shirt heard that and asked again, but he was thinking in his mind that we don't intend to bring out just one kid and ask for a big advertising contract. He walked closer to the room where the director was waiting to welcome him. When he saw him coming, he politely invited him in. He looked and asked, "Is the company okay these days?" The director said, "We still have a lot of shortcomings and need to ask the owner to take care of us a lot," but in his mind he looked disdainful, just a rude kid who dares to show his face. The young master said as he walked, "Seeing that the director is very compatible with me. Let's take care of each other in the future." The director politely bowed his head and said, "I go, thank you. My boss will do his best." But his eyes were filled with hatred for this young master. Looking at me slowly entering the room, he felt so satisfied. "Today you have stepped into the tiger's mouth, my son." The young master stepped inside and saw that everything was as he expected and even better. He looked satisfied and said, "I didn't expect this." The director asked again, "Are you satisfied?" The young master looked around and praised, "You are quite observant." Director Yang, when he heard it, he said, "Yes, thank you." Then asked again, "Where is she?" The director replied, "You see the last room there? She is obediently staying in that room." The young master stepped in step by step but still did not forget to ask, "Is it clean?" The director replied, "Of course no one has touched it, you can come and check directly. So now I will wait outside." The young master looked in through the glass door from outside and saw a girl with a sexy body and pretty appearance waiting for him. As soon as she saw him come in, she quickly said, "I hope you have a good time." Saw that everything was wonderful from the landscape and the way it was decorated, and especially the girl in front of him. He could only say two words, "Oh, it's amazing." Outside on the street, Tae-san was driving a supercar as fast as he could to get to the hotel where the ill-mannered young master was staying. Maybe Tae-san is very bitter and angry. As he walked away he cursed, "You son of a bitch, just try to lay a finger on Seo-rang's body. I will tear you apart." Outside the hotel lobby, the young master's men were standing guard very strictly, so Tae-san could easily confirm that this was the place. They were still talking and reminding each other, "Hey, work carefully and if you make a mistake, you'll all die," when suddenly they discovered something unusual. It's Tae-san's feet that are red with each step. Those soldiers saw Tae-san and quickly asked, "Hey, who are you and you can't come in here now?" But Tae-san still boldly walked in and they started to threaten, "Hey, I told you to get out of this building." Looking at Tae-san's face, cold as stone, his mind kept thinking about Seo-rang, "I will come soon." The soldiers continued to shout loudly, "Don't you understand human language? Do you want to die?" As soon as they finished speaking, Tae-san gave them a few punches and blood spewed out from their mouths and noses. Tae-san gave a decisive blow, knocking down the door guard, causing him to vomit blood and fall on his back. "Come here, Seo-rang. Just wait a little longer," his eyes said firmly. He defeated all the door guards and gradually entered. He thought to himself, "They are definitely here." At this time, the guy in the blue shirt had entered Rayon's room. He waved, "Hello, Seo-rang, hello." Rayon sat on the bed and said in a panic, "Who are you?" He pervertedly said, "Who else? It's you who love Seo-rang so much." The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "Is it you?" He nodded and smiled cunningly, "Yes, it was you." Realizing that it wasn't Tae-san, Rayon panicked and said, "You're not Tae-san." That pervert saw her reaction like that and said, "What, is it Tae-san? Could that guy have already licked her?" After that, he touched the girl's body. He touched her body and exclaimed that she was truly a rising idol, making Rayon extremely scared. With a bang, the girl slapped the other guy's face and screamed, telling him to get away. It was this action of the girl that made him angry and shout loudly, "This bitch." He didn't like it either. He immediately hit her back, making her scream in pain. The slap was so strong that she fell onto the bed. At this time, he still didn't know that Tae-san was about to come to the door. He still forcefully said, I was planning to quietly finish it, how dare you tease me, you'll surely die today. Pain and fear made Seo-rang unable to hold back her tears, she cried and called Tae-san's name. This scene was recorded by a hidden camera. The people standing in front of the screen silently observed and discussed with each other. The person on the left said, "That bastard has the same personality as his father." The other guy also spoke up, he said it himself, "What's more? That guy is a crazy guy. He uttered dirty and contemptuous words. How can a dog see poop? It's just as rumored, haha." They hadn't been complacent for a few seconds when suddenly a voice echoed in, startling them. They turned around and asked, "Who was it?" Without giving him time to be on guard, a strong punch punched him straight in the face, and the glasses on his face could not withstand the force and broke. The person who hit him was none other than Tae-san. With just one punch he made him fall over. The guy next to him could only be startled. He was so scared that he was sweating profusely, thinking, what the hell? Tae-san, with sharp eyes filled with murderous intent, looked at the other guy. He raised his fist in front of the other man's fear. Bang! A strong punch decisively hit him in the face. He fell face down on the floor and groaned in pain. The floor was still covered in blood. Those two guys were defeated by Tae-san alone, both of them lying down. While they were still struggling to get up, Tae-san asked again. "I asked if you were happy." Without letting them have any intention of answering, Tae-san cursed loudly, "These dogs, people like you must be exterminated." After saying that, he lifted both men up by their necks with both hands, causing them to have difficulty breathing and cough. He lifted both of them up and said, "Giving you food and living a normal life is too much luck, right? You guys should try to live by lying on the bed," he said, squeezing one guy's neck tightly. "When all your sins are paid for, God will take you away." As for the other guy who was strangled, he could only squeeze out a few words, "Who are you? Who are you?" "What am I, the god of death?" Tae-san said coldly. His hand squeezed tighter and tighter. The guy on the left cried out pitifully. The guy on the right was no less, screaming in pain. He continued, "Every day, every breath you take will be like living in hell." Having said that, these two guys almost died from suffocation and were lying around. After dealing with the trash guys, he now paid attention to the screen. The pervert's invitation was recorded live. "Come here, Syrian. Let me take you to the top." Tae-san's face darkened when he heard it. His long-standing anger seemed to be ignited and exploded. He loudly cursed and cursed this disgusting insect. Tae-san received dark karma points, just like a tiger growing wings. He burst out screaming, "I will kill you." Starting from this moment, the evil gods will intimately follow Tae-san, who becomes more and more crazy when he hears Seo-rang's cry for help on the screen. The scene changes to the room on the projection screen, where the girl is being forced. On the bed, the girl cried again at Dong-sun's provocation. She cried, "Why did you do that to me?" And he still didn't know anything, didn't know that a thunderstorm was about to fall on his head, so he still leisurely said complacently, "Do you think that Jang Tae-san will come to save you? You are mine, haha. Protesting won't do anything, just listen." Ryong can only cry out in protest. He excitedly stared at his prey while screaming, "Moving away, I didn't want to." Ryong shouted so loudly that his voice was hoarse. So he raised his hand to prepare to hit her and cursed, "This bitch already has a hoarse voice." Suddenly someone called out, "Oh Dong. Dong-sun." He seemed to recognize this voice and was startled. "Oh Dong-sun." The call got louder and louder. He turned around and looked startled. What was that? Ryong seemed to have been saved. She stopped crying. He got out of bed and gingerly walked closer to the door. Standing by the door, he shouted loudly, "Who the hell come out here?" Tae-san seemed to be possessed by a superhero. He directly used his hand to break through the door and strangle him from behind, causing him to have no time to react and cry out in agony. Not only Dong-sun, Tae-san didn't let go but blew open the door, lifted him up. He could only struggle and scream. Just the door away, Tae-san whispered in his ear that there are many people in this world who are not people who are passionate about taking things that don't belong to them. And knows how to justify, this world is like that. You will see that you are not the only one like that. Anyway, this world is inherently unfair, so you would think that doing this won't change anything, Tae-san said as he squeezed his hand tighter, making his face blue and his throat sticking out. His eyes widened, tears kept flowing. Tae-san continued that, even if you rob or fight, you must know how to do it neatly. The line between good and evil used to hypnotize yourself is only thin, just like a piece of paper. He asked, "Oh Dong-sun, isn't that right?" He used his remaining breath to negotiate with Tae-san, "If you let me live, the money will be yours." Hearing this, Tae-san continued asking, "Money, how much will you give me?" "I will give you 100 million, he said, but seeing that the number was too cheap, Tae-san shouted. "What, only 100 million? Then Tae-san coldly said, "Your network is also cheap, isn't that the third largest on a group?" 1 billion, he uttered the last words. But anyway, 1 billion is nothing to Tae-san. He threw him aside. He seemed to be resurrected from the dead and panted. Suddenly, Tae-san threw him a handful of white blister packs, surprising him. He seemed to grasp the other person's situation and said, "Hey, this is the medicine you like, drink that and then dance." "Drink all that?" he said, and he was looking at the pile of pills worriedly, tears constantly falling. Tae-san told him, "Drink all that then I will forgive you," causing him to hesitantly ask for forgiveness. "I was wrong. Please forgive me." No matter what he asks you to do, you still say in a cold voice, "Good medicine is meant to be taken orally." So he had to swallow it all, no matter how fast or slow. Tae-san peeled off all the pills in one go, stuffing the whole handful into Oh Dong-sung's mouth. A photo posted on social networks attracted a lot of attention from netizens. Underneath Oh Dong-sung's photo are a series of comments from the Korean online community that are suspicious and insulting. At this time, a shout rang out in the group. "Hey, those bastards." The shouting startled all the staff there. The person yelled at him and swung his golf club, breaking the plant pot. "Damn it, how much medicine did he take?" The middle-aged man raised his stick and pointed at the person in front of him, asking where that kid was now. "Who the hell gave him the medicine?" The young man replied tremblingly, "He received an invitation from KNB Entertainment Company, so he went there." Perhaps, the medicine was there, he used it there. The middle-aged man angrily shouted again. "Words, invitations, quickly arrest those bastards and bring them here." The guy stammered again, that. "We, already late," the man panicked again. "What, why are you late?" The young man hesitated. The police had already arrested them. The middle-aged man raised his stick and shouted, "What, is it because of the medicine? Speak clearly." He answered tremblingly, "Because of embezzlement at work, and also because of the suicides of female singers who previously belonged to that company." The middle-aged man was startled. "What, damned, those are the two words that appear in his mind right now." He called out to the person in front of him, "Chief Yu," the guy immediately replied. "Yes, just say it." He turned black and immediately set up a team of lawyers to respond, specializing in blocking the party's speech. "Do everything they ask, no matter what you do, you must stop it," Chief Yu stammered in acceptance. Yes." The middle-aged man spoke again, and contacted Yo Hyuk, "Tell him to spend time with me, I need to meet him." This time at Tae-san's company. He was going online to see people's comments about the Oh Dong-sung group's incident. Watching for a moment, he smirked and said goodbye to Oh Dong-sung. In the night while screaming and running away like that, Oh Dong-sung will definitely be asked by the people of this country of Korea forever. "I took the panicked Seo-rang home, gave her water, and she fell asleep. I have deleted all CCTV at the scene. That director's brother has already blocked an important lifeline, their muscles will become more and more tired. I will not be able to walk quickly for the rest of my life, and will have to live my whole life relying on diapers. Even if you live, you cannot be said to be living." Tae-san remembered that at that time a message appeared in his mind. He had received dark karma points. From this moment on, evil spirits will be watching you. He looked solemn, wondering what the dark karma was. Tae-san bit his lip and thought, "It's not over yet. I will uproot all of you." Sunset covers the city. Felton Hotel headquarters, Virginia, a voice rang out, still unable to find stars. In the end, everything went nowhere. An older man asked the person standing across from him. That person replied, "The union has bought back 20% of the personal investment fund. It seems like I bought it at the same time with a few other funds, I don't know yet." The hotel director shouted, "Try contacting the union, tell them they will pay double the purchase price. If they secretly transferred all my shares like that, what would I do in my life until now? I have never encountered a crisis as big as this. Harrison, tell me, what's wrong with 10 billion but now it's changed hands for only $3 billion? I didn't go into business just to encounter a situation like this." Harrison's sweat dropped and replied, "But looks like the wire is from Korea." This statement surprised the director. "What about Korea? A small country." Harrison loudly said that the first condition for the union to become a major shareholder is that they require a special figure in Korea to be the major shareholder. According to what I learned, the company investing in Korea owns 1% of the company's shares. The words made the middle-aged man more and more surprised. "What, you mean that person is a personal fund investor?" Harrison explained that due to the nature of individual investment funds, it is impossible to find the fund owner. The director ordered him, "Leave, you have to find it for me." He frowned, and increased the bet for Hillary. Even so, an FA still had to borrow the power of the government, Harry, and replied immediately, "Yes, I will go to work immediately." The director was upset. "I don't know who it is, but if you dare to steal from me, I will kill you. I'll skin him and throw him in the California desert." In Korea right now, Tae-san is chatting online with Robert. "Robert, let's prepare a free auction. I have sent the documents via email. The object is AAA Corporation." On the screen Robert wondered, "Boss, how much do you want to do it?" He laughed, "I want to take over the business. I hope you can make arrangements as quickly as possible for me." Robert replied, "Yes boss, I will go handle it right away." Ah, and I have something to report. The Felton team contacted the union, Tae-san laughed. Because of the problem of buying shares. Robert replied again, yes, they intend to take it back at a good price. He still calmly smiled. Please tell them that I have no intention of selling the shares I have. With the current market, please send the business situation report to shareholders, then do what I say. Then he thought, I haven't even started yet, this bunch. Robert agreed. I will relay the same to them. Tae-san is satisfied. Okay, so you've worked hard. Robert. He said one more sentence and then hung up. I will report regularly, boss. Finishing the conversation with Robert, he walked right in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the room, looked at the scene, and thought, even if they were servants, I would turn them into the most qualified people. He smirked, Dong Zhuang, if you're reincarnated. Don't see me again. Suddenly the internal phone rang. Director and manager Huang Yuntai of KNB Entertainment Company came looking for him. He turned his head and responded, let him in. After that announcement, a man pushed open the door and walked in. Tae-san spoke first. Inviting him in, Chief Huang. Seeing him, the man was startled. No, you. He said cheerfully. Please sit down, Chief Huang is shy. Oh, yes. He also sat down opposite him and said. Suddenly calling you here like this, you must be very surprised. Huang laughed it off. Right, he thought, sweating, are you kidding me? Tae-san said something meaningful. The representative director of KNB has been arrested. Manager Huang smiled wryly. Yes, I don't know who it was, but that person's work is truly a good thing for our company. Tae-san frankly and arrogantly admitted that I was the one who did that. This startled Huang. Yes, what? He panicked and thought, what is he saying now? Who is this kid, anyway? Tae-san laughed again. The star depends on you. Director Huang, he was shocked. Yes, what did you say? He smirked. I chose you to be the director of this new entertainment company called MTS. Huang turned to stone immediately after saying that. Tae-san smiled at him. Manager Huang still remembers what he said before. Huang was startled. Yes, no words, at this time. He was also very confused. Am I the director? Tae-san smiled lightly. He looked at Huang and continued, promising that he would do his best to take care of those young people. Huang was startled to remember, at the ski area. He suddenly stood up. The future wave of Korean culture will definitely develop to an unimaginable level. Huang is confusing, yes. Tae-san continued, the Korean cultural wave of idols will spread. The man was frightened by his words. Eh? He smiled and stated his thoughts. K-pop will hit the world like a new genre. Please continue what you have done for the company. Tae-san remembered a girl and thought. Say Ryan, now I know that you will only walk on a path paved with roses. At a coffee shop, in the air with a steaming cup of coffee, a voice rang out, wondering if business in the artist world is profitable. The other person answered, I don't know if the younger brother from the same neighborhood he mentioned is Say Ryan. Everything was handled through some lawyer firm. Lawyer Joe's facial expression also became better and better. The other man asked Tae-san. Do you like her? He smiled and replied, I only take care of her because she looks like my twin sister. Oh, and if possible I want to buy back all the shares of this law firm. This statement surprised Lawyer Joe. What, everything? He calmly said yes, please help me buy it all. The man panicked. They probably won't be able to give it out easily. You're still confident, please tell me that the first seller will get 100 billion won for me, the second person will be 90 billion. These words made the lawyer gasp in shock. He was sweating. Do you think 100 billion is a small number? He smiled. Some law firm deserves such value. The lawyer raised his voice. That was too expensive. Just 50 billion was enough to buy back that company. He remained calm. Don't worry, just do it. Lawyer Joe was also speechless. Wow, that weird guy. He continued. Let's handle everything smoothly, don't let there be any rumors, and as for those who were once representatives, keep them as honorary advisors. The lawyer stammered, but, after all. Relationships, this is where relationships with big businesses are. Tae-san confidently said. Don't worry, just don't leave any enemies behind, there's an even bigger guest waiting for us. He was surprised. What, the guest was bigger? Tae-san still laughed. It would be better to keep the trustworthy lawyers and kick out those who might betray him. Joe asked again. Oh, all over the company, he answered, of course. However, I will take a look at the staff list first. Joe laughed. If the investor wants it, of course he has to do it. This will start right away, Tae-san calmly replied. Yes, let's get started. At this rate. The specialized plane will take off, maybe so. That afternoon at the airport. Inside the VIP room, someone asked, isn't the atmosphere very strange? There was a response. Detecting unusual movement, unidentified capital is being imported everywhere. The other person asked again, the money's identity was unknown. The person on the screen in front of the man explained again, it started from tax evasion and is flowing to America, Europe and even Hong Kong. The other person asked again. What about the scale? The reporter continued, just at the scale we know, it is more than tens of billions of dollars. The man was a bit surprised, it was not a small amount. The other person continued, it was hidden very cleverly, I only just caught it. The people in the room asked again, it seemed like it wasn't the profiteering investors. But in this complicated situation, it was the children's side, otherwise it's the night order side. The person on the screen shook their head, I couldn't identify them. It has been thoroughly implemented in the form of private equity funds. I looked up the IP but it didn't work. The man in the room sat up straight, okay, in that case. The person on the screen asked again. Boss, should I notify the council and issue a level 1 summons? He interrupted. No, wait a little longer. If that amount of money will definitely reveal your identity. We should take a closer look, there's no need to act first and then reveal your tale. The person on the other end replied, I understand. The man continued, this is an important moment. The world is finally turning towards us. When the children are passionate about victory, we will rob them. I have endured this humiliation for 100 years. Please contact the Dan Guardians, must be very careful to find that change. The person on the screen respectfully shouted, I will obey the boss's orders. The man spoke to the screen again, next time I will go to Korea, then please contact me by signal. The other person replied, I will, then disappeared from the screen. The man stood in front of the window thinking, the era of black cats and white cats chasing mice is past. The era of luxury is not long left. For our brothers, the man stood under the sunset illuminating his silhouette. Right now outside the airport. One person held a suspicious business card, the director of an entertainment company. Not bad either, that man was Tae-san, he was standing against a column and seemed to stand out among the crowd. He looked at the business card with satisfaction, Director Juan would know what to do, AAA Corporation will soon be in hand. And also, Robert is the shadowy manager of the Felton Hotel. I thought of someone. Uncle, are you still well? I have no intention of letting you kick my mother out, I will find you soon. During the financial turmoil of 2008, many businesses changed hands, that wave had consequences for many years, anyone who sees it can only admit that this is a difficult time for businesses. Suddenly a voice rang out behind him, Daniel, he turned around in surprise. It turned out that the person who called was Clara and her family. Happy Tae-san, Clara. The scene changed to another place, in the flickering candlelight. A voice rang out, wake up, descendant of the man wearing the iron mask. Awakened after a long sleep, carrying the sword of revenge. Cut off the heads of dragons and snakes. My sons, get ready. Go spread fear, trample on them. Other voices said in unison. Yes, we will trample and trample on them. The chant ended, and a pair of mysterious eyes appeared under a black cloak, looking very scary. A mysterious voice rang out. Look for the heir of the wolf god. The man in the black shirt said he had to be stopped. Let's find him before the people of heaven and earth society. He continued, and crushed him. 100 years ago was the same as then. He coldly said, kill them all. The crowd shouted loudly, obeying the commander's orders. The man in the black shirt smiled and said, summarizing the strength of the entire new nation for good, before the god got angry. The descendant of the wolf god. Then his eyes suddenly flashed yellow, glared, and said evilly, destroy him. In front of the house. A brown-haired woman smiled brightly, greeted everyone. Said, welcomed everyone. Clara ran up to that woman, shouting, Mommy. The woman smiled and said, oh, Clara, long time no see, she's becoming more and more beautiful. The man in the red shirt standing next to him smiled and said, wow, it's perfect. I didn't expect there to be such a beautiful place in Korea, Clara happily said, Mom is also much more beautiful, she misses everyone so much. Emmanuel said hello, I'm Emmanuel. Nice to meet you, Li Jiang also spoke up, I am Li Jiang, Clara's father. Li Jiang said, it's rude that I came empty-handed like this, the brown-haired woman said, oh don't say that, I've worked hard to come all the way here like this. The woman smiled brightly, then said, nice to meet you, I'm Ju Shou-ran. Zhang Tae-san stood next to him and asked. Where is Dad? Ju Shou-ran replied, he had something to do so he went out, he would return in the evening with the twins. Li Jiang suddenly panicked and cried out, no, Emmanuel worriedly asked, dear, what's wrong? Li Jiang said, this is one of the most prosperous plots of land I have ever seen. Looking at the surroundings, he continued, he didn't expect that I would be able to come to a place with such a beautiful location. At this time, in a music hall, a loud and angry voice rang out, Zhang Tae-san, who the hell is that again? The secretary answered, being a junior at Dongzong School. The man with the mole on his forehead said indignantly, what, is this junior studying law at a Korean university? The secretary said, this time he just enrolled, that man angrily said. Dongzong and the new student have nothing to do with each other, it's not like that kid forced him to take medicine. The secretary timidly replied, because there was no CCTV around. But it was still impossible to know who the people who attacked the boss that day were. The secretary said that the girl who was with Dongzong that day called the attacker her brother. And according to the investigation, that girl did not have a biological brother but called that person her brother. Then he continued, besides the Jung Tae-san, there was no one else. The other man slammed his hand on the table and said aggressively, is this information accurate? The secretary calmly replied, yes, I have mobilized the investigation team and verified this information. The other man was surprised, opened his eyes wide, and said, so that new student attacked him alone and gave him medicine, impossible, so what about those guys standing there, they didn't even see the culprit's face. The secretary replied, yes, see nothing. Because they are backed into a corner. The man still didn't believe it and asked again. Is he that good? The secretary said, in my hometown, gangsters only need to hold a knife to be arrested. Then he looked straight at the other man and asked, the president also doesn't know, right? He said, 2 years ago there was an event in this area that wiped out the gangsters. The man was so surprised that he gasped and exclaimed, what, that brat, is it Jang Tae-san? The secretary said, as far as I know, his power is quite large. The other man spoke loudly and powerfully, that kid looks so young, okay, release the guys from team 2 and bring them here. The secretary didn't seem to believe it and asked again, 2, you said the 2-star team. The other man shouted loudly, the kid is very good at fighting, so we have to use team 2. The secretary replied, yes, I got it. The man clenched his fist, thinking, if everything he said was true. He pursed his lips, his face gloomy, and made a decision, he must kill it, Jang Tae-san. Jang Tae-san's father held up the beer bottle and said excitedly, come on, drink another cup, cheer, cheer. Li Jiang enthusiastically responded, saying, if you leave any leftovers, you will be fine an extra drink, ooh. The two men shouted in unison, Korean soju is amazing. The two twins next to them were bored, thinking to themselves, is this really the first time these two people have met? Then they suddenly remembered something and said, but where did you and I go? Haven't seen it since. At this time, Jang Tae-san and Clara were walking around. Looking up at the sky, Clara exclaimed, wow, it's so beautiful, this place is really great. She smiled and continued, Daniel, I feel like a Korean, just coming here makes me feel better. Jang Tae-san smiled and said, I too, if I come to Hong Kong, I always feel more comfortable. Clara shyly said, it's not that I don't like Hong Kong, but because this is where you were born and raised, I like this place. Jang Tae-san suddenly asked, what's wrong? Clara hesitated a bit and just. Suddenly, she cried out, Daniel. Jang Tae-san turned his head and asked, what's wrong? Clara bowed her head slightly and said, no matter what happens, let's not hate each other. Jang Tae-san asked worriedly, Clara, what's really going on? Jang Tae-san held her arms and asked kindly, was the company so difficult? Then he said, if it's too hard, quit your job and come work with me. Clara replied, yes, so I will quit my job. She continued, if Daniel helps me, you will be kicked out of the house. Clara said, Daniel. Jang Tae-san was confused and exclaimed, ha. Clara suddenly put her arms around Jang Tae-san's neck and said, for now let's ignore all other thoughts, let's just. She continued, simply loving each other, having finished speaking. She hugged him and kissed him. In the high-rise building, a scream rang out, let's meet, let me treat you. Jang Tae-san picked up the phone and said, suddenly inviting me, is there something wrong? The blonde girl on the other side said, today is the day I receive my salary. Jang Tae-san said, receiving his salary. The girl replied, yes, this time my company changed sponsors, after manager Huang became the representative, the office changed a lot. The girl continued to say that the company offered more delicious and healthier food, the driver had also changed to someone else. And all the interns were signed on a contract and paid according to the minimum wage. For official employees, if you work for 4 months or more, you will receive insurance, very happy. Jang Tae-san exclaimed, wow, your company is really great. The girl continued to talk, and the salary was also changed to being paid every 5th day of the month. The girl happily said, from the 5th of next month, I will receive my salary. Jang Tae-san took his jacket and replied, that's a really good company, don't quit that job and definitely stick to it. The elevator is going down, the girl exclaimed, it was so awesome, the best ever. She continued to praise, yes, there is no such good company in Korea. Maybe the best in the world, Jang Tae-san smiled and asked, not knowing who that sponsor was, but it was so great. The girl said, is that so? I don't know who it is, but that person is as dumb as you. Jang Tae-san smiled and said, in any case, comparing with Na is a bit too much. The girl countered, how, let's put it that way, your brother is the best in the world. She asked him, by the way, are you busy, going down to the parking garage? Jang Tae-san asked again, what? That girl asked, aren't you dating someone? Whether it's a girl or a boy, it's okay, Jang Tae-san answered as he walked. Because school was about to start, so he was a bit busy. He continued, aren't you preparing to release your second album in the spring? The girl was surprised and asked, oh, how did you know? Jang Tae-san calmly said, it's related to Syrian, the second album must be successful. Because you always support me, so even if you're tired, you have to endure it. That girl smiled and said, he was in such a good mood. Jang Tae-san was concerned and said, it's late, go to sleep. The girl replied, yes, I slept well. Fold the phone down. Suddenly, he heard a loud call, hey, Jang Tae-san. Jang Tae-san turned his head towards the direction of the sound. Then I saw a group of people in black clothes blocking my way. He smiled and thought, what are these people? A voice called out, hey, Jang Tae-san. A group of black-shirted people stared at Jang Tae-san. Jang Tae-san was not afraid and said, hey, you're so quiet. The black-shirted man in the head raised his face and said, whatever, you have the ability. Hearing that guy say that, Jang Tae-san thought, look, that's the face of a murderer. Then he said, I'm busy, if you come to me if you have anything to say, just say it directly. He thought, all of them, doesn't look nice either. Look at the landline phone on the table. The secretary worriedly whispered, why is it taking so long? He whispered, really annoyed. At this time, at Jang Tae-san's side, he alone defeated nearly half of the black-shirted men. Some of them could not stand up and lay exhausted on the ground. A man in black was so surprised that he exclaimed, what, you? Jang Tae-san smiled and said in a provocative voice, apologizing for his mistake. Then he punched that guy's face hard, shouted loudly, go to the hospital and repent. That guy was thrown away, making a coughing sound. Jang Tae-san continued to attack the remaining people. Those people were so crowded that all they could do was say, okay. Jang Tae-san grinned triumphantly. The man with his hair tied saw this and asked in panic, who are you? The man next to him was punched by Jang Tae-san, and he let out a howl. Blood splashed out. Jang Tae-san's voice rang out, don't you know me? Then he proudly said, I'm Jang Tae-san. At the same time, the secretary's phone rang. He hurriedly picked up the phone and said, hello, Captain Hoon, what took you so long? The secretary urged, there is only one person to solve, the CEO is still waiting. Jang Tae-san's voice came from the other end of the phone, oh, hello you, have you been looking at your phone all this time? The secretary was surprised, said, what the heck, who? Jang Tae-san said, I am Jang Tae-san. The secretary was so shocked that he opened his eyes wide and said loudly, Jang Tae-san. Next to Jang Tae-san, the defeated black-shirted men were lying on the ground. Jang Tae-san said to that secretary named you, Mr. You, why are you looking for me for no reason? Jang Tae-san calmly said, the matter of Deong-sung being high on drugs had nothing to do with me. Could it be that he was so mentally retarded that he didn't know it was drugs? Walking among the crowd of people lying on the ground, Jang Tae-san continued, the CEO must also understand that. Then he smiled and said, I don't know much about the rest, but I'm very good at burning down other people's houses. Should I try? Secretary Yu on the other side said loudly. What's wrong, you brat? Where's Captain Hoon? Give him the phone right away. Looking at Captain Hoon, Jang Tae-san said, his brain was temporarily disabled. He was still lying on the ground here, that's why I answered the phone for him. Hearing that, Secretary Yu stammered, young man, damn, you. Jang Tae-san said, shut his mouth and listen. Looking at the people on the ground. Jang Tae-san said, if you guys dare to touch me again, I will post all the pictures of today. I have recorded everything today, the right to life and death is in your hands, Jang Tae-san threatened, no matter how much support you guys have, you still understand what is the best way to protect yourself, right, am I right? The secretary exclaimed in panic, what? Jang Tae-san suddenly continued, by the way, my mother also belongs to that faction. Her last name is Yeo. Then he continued, so please don't touch me, you. Secretary Yu was shocked and thought, Yeo family, that's impossible. The sun is gradually appearing behind the mountain. At a high-rise building, a man's voice rang out, why is Jang calling me so early? Jang Tae-san said, we have to sign the contract today. The man on the other side of the computer screen asked, the contract will be signed at 11 o'clock. Is there anything wrong? Jang Tae-san replied, nothing. Then he smiled and said, please arrange it well. The man on the other side said authoritatively, don't worry. Don't you believe in me? Jang Tae-san asked, how is the CEO of the law firm? The other man replied that former Supreme Court Chief Justice An Woo-hyun had already been approved by half. Jang Tae-san smiled and said, that's good. The man on the other side asked, tell me the truth, how have you been these days? Jang Tae-san replied, you don't have to worry. I'll tell you when I get a chance. The man reassuredly replied, okay, I'll wait. Jang Tae-san politely said, keep up the good work. Remembering Chairman O, Tae-san thought, Chairman O, please try to get out of this mud. On the computer screen, Robert suddenly appeared. He said, Boss. Tae-san saw Robert appear and asked, Hello Robert, are you ready? Robert did not answer that question but asked another question, Is there something wrong with you? Tae-san replied, They plan to kidnap me and Anna. The man's voice rang out, What, kidnapping? I'll send an assassin. Then he continued, I have connections with the KGB and a few other intelligence assassins, I can handle everything quickly and without a trace. Tae-san said helplessly, No, please don't send anyone, where is the plan going? Robert replied. Now we just wait for your orders, the fund is already prepared. Tae-san said, Let's start. Let's get excited today. Robert replied, Yes, I will make sure everything goes smoothly. Tae-san told Robert to send all the money out so they couldn't buy it all at once, then wipe them out. The prestigious Robert said, Don't worry, that's my expertise. Tae-san replied, Thanks to you, Robert. At this moment, Tae-san thought to himself. Chairman O, from tomorrow onwards, you are just a fish on the cutting board. At this time, at President O's company, President O excitedly said loudly, What? He asked Secretary Yu, Are you sure she is President Yu's sister? Secretary Yu replied, Yes, I conducted a relative investigation and the results were correct. Secretary Yu continued, She is indeed the daughter of the former president. Chairman O sweat dropped and said, So Chairman Yo has a half-sister. The secretary added, Besides that guy is stronger than we thought, I sent Captain Wong to deal with him, but they were all defeated. Chairman O cursed, You useless people. Even a brat can't handle it, Secretary Yu said, President Yo will misunderstand us. Chairman O said, Chairman Yo is just a worthless person, it's troublesome. Secretary Yu worriedly said, The Tae-san's house has a lot of money, and even stocks. President O asked, What about that girl? Suddenly, the phone rang. President O asked, What's wrong? The other end of the line answered. Mr. Chairman, Head of Finance Lee Nam-kyu wants to see you about something urgent. Chairman O said, Chiefly, please come in. Lee Nam-kyu suddenly opened the door and shouted loudly, President. Seeing him in such a hurry. President O asked, What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? Lee Nam-kyu replied. It's a big deal, Mr. President. President O asked, What's so serious? Tell me. Lee Nam-kyu quickly replied, The thing is, just recently, a large amount of foreign funds attacked the affiliated parties. Hearing that, Chairman O and Secretary Yu's faces were filled with worry. Lee Nam-kyu said wearily, in the form of short selling. Hearing this, Chairman O and Secretary Yu were surprised and exclaimed at the same time, What, wow, short selling. The announcer's voice emanated from the car's speakers, saying that Anna Group's shares kept falling day by day. According to the latest source, the U.S. Cooperation Department of Anna Joint Stock Company is being investigated by the IRS Federal Tax Department on suspicion of tax evasion. As a result, the group's stock price fell more than 40%. It is predicted that there will soon be a global financial crisis, he whispered, as they started to manage. Well, everything is over now, try your best. His face radiated satisfaction. The car rushed down the road. Accompanied by an arrogant voice, You must pay for what you have done. Scene changed to a company building. The vending machine whirred and then a can of water fell out of the machine. Tae-san was bending down to get the can of water he just bought when suddenly someone called, making him startled and turned around, Hey, Tae-san. The voice just now turned out to be Aaron's. Tae-san said shyly, Aaron Sr. She suddenly complimented, Wow, you look really good today. She groaned twice, her face started to turn red and continued. Thank you for what happened the other day, I'll treat you to a delicious meal. But why didn't you call me? Tae-san suddenly thought to himself, What, you confessed your love to me when you were drunk. Today Aaron wore a very striking red outfit, revealing her seductive collarbones. Her hands were stuffed into her pockets, just looking at her made her look pretty. Thanks to the dating skills that Mr. Nova taught, Tae-san suddenly spoke up, Senior, you are very beautiful today. After hearing that, Aaron was stunned and stood still for 5 seconds, then his face turned red and he said nothing. Now, if I want to surprise women, it's easy. Tae-san turned around and winked, Handsome, even more handsome, he said. The weather is warmer but it's still very cold. After saying that, he gave her the can of water he just bought from the vending machine. Hey, drink it. After hearing what he said, Aaron gasped, as if she couldn't believe her eyes widened and she suddenly said. Where did you learn that mischievous way of talking, Tae-san, so you're a shy person? Tae-san's eyes were full of affection, his mouth smiled meaningfully and said, Next time I will invite you to a meal. After saying that, he turned around and walked forward, before leaving. He left a sentence, I have class, please go first, then he left and left Aaron alone there. She angrily shouted, Where are you going? Aren't you going to the new student welcome ceremony? After Tae-san left, Aaron wondered if the new students also had a welcoming class. She seemed to suddenly remember something. Her face suddenly darkened, looking at Jang Tae-san's back and thinking, new law students don't have specialized classes on Monday. Scene changed to Korean University. From the classroom upstairs came the bustling noise and laughter of students. Sat and talked and laughed happily. Looking at the students in front of me talking comfortably. Walking arm in arm, they talked and laughed as they walked, making the classroom very noisy. Even though there was a teacher in the classroom, no one seemed to care. Everyone continued with their stories. This makes Sun Yuri uncomfortable. I can't breathe. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, mentally cursing, Jang Tae-san is really a little devil. The friend sitting next to her saw her face droop and asked, Egu, your face looks sad, what's wrong? Your boyfriend dumped you. She lowered her head tiredly and replied, that's not it. Having said that, Sun Yuri raised her head and spoke shyly, thinking about having to draw for another 2 years found it too difficult. I can't breathe at all. Her tablemate was surprised to hear that. Are you serious? We are close friends. A smart student like you is also vague about the future. I can't believe it. She continued, your family must be very busy. Just try to get high scores, then study abroad and become a professor. The teacher stood above and looked around and said, I see there are some new students. Today is the first day, so let's take attendance. You all know that I won't take attendance anymore, right? For an artist, the best words can only be his own paintings. Students who participate in top art competitions will be exempted from immediately. The students sitting below were all shocked to hear the teacher say that. The teacher continued speaking, and of course still guaranteed their students' scores. And if anyone can draw a picture that I like, then I will be able to pass my specialized subjects. Hearing this, all the students seemed happy. Everyone had their own thoughts. The person standing above laughed heartily. What do you think? Isn't that wonderful? Having finished speaking, I started taking attendance. Choi Dikil, yes. The teacher stopped to praise this student for a moment. The sculpture student was very patient. I expect that from you. Student Choi Dikil scratched his head shyly. The teacher continued to hold the attendance list. Sun Yuri, she lazily replied, yes. The teacher stopped and looked at Sun Yuri and said, last year you were in my class too. Right, I also hope to see your performance this year. She obediently thanked the professor. Lee Hunkil, yes. The professor looked at the student below and said, you're a reservation student, right? I hear your voice as if you've returned from the army. The student scratched his ear and smiled shyly. It seemed the teacher was right. The teacher looked at the list again, then suddenly discovered something unusual. Oh, what is this? Why are law students in this class? This statement also surprised the whole class. When Sun Yuri heard about law students, she gasped in surprise, and her heart was also filled with anxiety. The teacher read the law student's name, Jang Tae-san. A response came from the last row, yes, making everyone surprised. As if they couldn't believe their ears, they opened their eyes wide and turned to look. Who was that? Sun Yuri was the most surprised person. Her face showed fear as if she couldn't believe her eyes, her mouth opened wide as if this was impossible. Stammering and saying, Jang Tae-san. Her eyes opened even wider, her face darkened and she looked back, unable to believe it was Tae-san. It's him, Jang Tae-san. His face was always so handsome. His blue eyes and attractive smile. The teacher was also surprised by the appearance of this law student. He asked again if there was any mistake. New student, it seems like he was placed in the wrong class, right? Jang Tae-san happily replied, no, the arrangement is correct, no mistake, professor. In class, there was gradually a buzz about this student. Yuri's tablemate also had to praise him. Wow, he's so handsome. Yuri, do you know that person? Yuri was still surprised about Jang Tae-san. She still couldn't believe her eyes. The professor continued, I don't understand why law students are here, but you didn't register for general courses, did you? Jang Tae-san heard that and could only say, yes, I heard that other subjects are also great. When the male students here heard him say that, they were also surprised. Each of them had stupid faces. Then shout together, then you must be 100% good at that practice. Jang Tae-san heard his friend say that and asked the professor, Professor, did I hear it right? As soon as he finished speaking, Yuri and the professor were a bit surprised, unable to adapt. The professor suddenly said, What did I say? Jang Tae-san's face darkened and he said, Teacher said that for an artist, his words are his paintings. The professor countered, no, that question is only for majors. Jang Tae-san sat down and replied, he also majored in art. How can the teacher believe this when he's just a law student, but now he says he's majoring in fine arts? Are you kidding me? Even though you're a new student, my patience still has its limits. The teacher put his hands on his hips and continued to say, from today you have 1 week to amend your registration, please re-register for your science subject. Jang Tae-san, sitting below, immediately replied, I don't want to. His expression was full of confidence and he said, I'm confident I'll do well. The professor was so angry that he couldn't stand it any longer and sobbed heavily on the table. How could there be such stubborn students? He shouted, Hey brat, are you looking down on art? When the students below heard that, they were stunned for a few seconds and then shouted. Do we look like idiots, that law student, huh? Jang Tae-san bowed his head with sincerity and said, I would rather study art than real life. His eyes became sparkling when talking about this art field. I can study this subject well. Art is beauty, so anyone can learn it. The professor's face continued to darken, seemingly very angry. He confidently said, I will prove it to you. Prove what? The teacher shouted loudly. Jang Tae-san continued arrogantly, just let me do the test like the students here. It seems he is very confident about his major. After listening, the teacher asked vaguely what it was like. He smiled arrogantly, the technique didn't matter, pencil, paint, water, oil wax, gouge, take your pick, it seems like victory is in hand. The teacher and the whole class did not believe that this law student could paint a decent picture. The teacher's eyes became dangerous, as if wanting to see how embarrassed this law student would be. I would grade him. Jang Tae-san didn't care about those things, smiled gently and replied, of course. The teacher's face suddenly looked very scary. If you can't do it, then shut up and leave here. It seemed like Jang Tae-san was sure of the results, so he didn't show fear, on the contrary. Confidence appeared on his face. Yuri witnessed from beginning to end. She was equally surprised, as if she couldn't believe her eyes, whispering, Tae-san. The teacher with a face full of disgust and cunning said, and if you fail then shut up and go away. Tae-san looked at the teacher eye to eye and smiled confidently and replied, of course. Yuri was surprised, looked at the male lead with a wide face and whispered, Tae-san. Tae-san spoke up in the student's disbelief and admiration. He never wanted things to turn out like this, but his eyes were firmly and sternly saying, I'm sorry, everyone. Going back a bit to the past time, the scene around Tae-san was now dark. A voice said, are you here, making him curiously wonder, or am I this time? As the surrounding landscape gradually appeared, before the male protagonist's eyes there was a silhouette of a man. The male lead was surprised and asked, who are you? The man smiled slightly. In front of his eyes now was a person with black hair tied in a messy bun behind him. A patchy beard, dull eyes, a bottle of wine in his hand and a rather old-fashioned outfit. He replied, I am uncle, yours, a painter. Tae-san smiled wryly and said, you said you were my uncle, maybe you were some ancestor of my family. The man also laughed loudly and continued, you often retort, if you have lived on this small piece of land, after all, it is all blood and flesh. He was still talking continuously while the male lead's appearance was clearly speechless. So they were all his aunts and uncles. When he came to the inn, didn't he also call the maid an aunt? Everything has a way of addressing things like that. Tae-san suddenly realized and exclaimed, wait, you said painter. He sweat dropped and looked at the man in front of him, wondering, huh, are you a painting fairy? Painter Tree replied calmly, ha ha, that's right, the master painter you know is me. Tae-san's sweat dropped in disbelief and asked in confusion, so why sir? He frowned, smiled awkwardly and said, why do you have that look on your face? I didn't cause any trouble. Then, without beating around the bush, he got straight to the main issue we were here for. We need to help each other. If you have enough points, give some to your poor monk uncle. The male lead suddenly inquired, what, why? Master Tree replied as if what he just said was obvious, of course, I will teach you my style. Isn't this the spirit of helping each other and also humanity? Tae-san thought unhappily in his heart, I've never dealt with him before. Acting bossy means I'm an expert. He replied with a no-nonsense attitude, learning that would be effective, what? He immediately got upset and retorted, hey, don't you know how much money painting can make? Unlike in the past, now it is no longer a problem. The male lead looked disdainful and replied, hey, we are all players, why do you act like that? Even if you are good at drawing, you still have to die to make money. He smiled proudly and said, and I already have a lot of money. Master Tree grimaced and said loudly, hey, you have to be generous, understand? He complained and blamed you, you are too stingy. Even if you become a monk, you will still be called stingy. The male lead calmly replied, but I have lived a beautiful life with a full stomach. Suddenly, behind Tae-san's back, a voice called out, Foreman. The two turned back to observe. Approaching were the silhouettes of three rather strange men. The painter blamed him, hey, why are you only here now? He kept talking loudly, it will take a long time to fill it up, if you do this you will go to hell. Tae-san was worried and confused, looking at the three people who had just arrived with curiosity. He silently exclaimed in his heart, what the hell is this? Their appearance, Paul Cezanne asked, Foreman, what's wrong with you today? Paul Gauguin said with a smile, I can finish this quickly. The male lead wondered and asked the painter, but, uncle, who are these people? He still had a drunken face and replied, what about them? He slightly smiled and said, they're not very famous so you won't know. Cezanne was surprised, your nephew, Gauguin greeted kindly, nice to meet you, I'm Gauguin. When Tae-san heard this name, he was panicked and surprised, his eyes widened and his mouth gaped, exclaiming, huh, who? The man with long flowing hair happily introduced, my full name is actually Paul Gauguin. When the male lead heard this, he sweated nonstop and stammered in his head, Gauguin, the artist representing post-impressionist painting Paul Gauguin. Then, still with that gentle look, Gauguin turned to the side and said, I think you might know the person standing next to me. The man next to me also enthusiastically introduced himself. Nice to meet you, my name is Paul Cezanne. Making the male protagonist even more shocked, he silently exclaimed in his heart, gasp, Paul Cezanne, the lone pioneer known as the father of modern painting, Paul Cezanne. Cezanne's body trembled with excitement, his mouth still couldn't close because he was so shocked. Was this real? His eyes next focused on the man behind the two of them, then guessed, and? In his mind, he began to reason. Behind him there was a man standing strangely. He looked so familiar. At this moment, Cezanne immediately noticed and realized, his ears were bandaged. His eyes suddenly revealed a look of admiration and disbelief. He silently speculated, Van Gogh. Returning to the present, the male lead is skillfully holding a pen and gliding across the smooth surface of paper. To the admiration and surprise of all the students present in the room at this time. His hands were still gracefully drawing light strokes. The students were still attentively observing Cezanne's every move without looking away. They all exclaimed in surprise, it was crazy, and then silently said in their hearts, who was that guy? A female student with short hair. The teacher couldn't help but be shocked at this moment. The god of disaster has arrived. The return of the god of disaster. Cezanne's painting is gradually being completed in front of everyone's disbelief. The teacher gasped in surprise, was that Van Gogh? A few hours later, students started walking back and forth at the school. West Building, lecture room. The teacher sat attentively looking at the picture Cezanne just drew not long ago, observing carefully and thinking, the madness of colors that Master Van Gogh can express. The way a painter uses his pen contains the soul. He said unhappily, he was much more accurate than me, he used turpentine and hemp seed oil. He lowered his eyes, frowned slightly and speculated, everything was rudimentary and not at all complicated, but it was also planned in advance, everything. The teacher's body trembled, but he also secretly acknowledged in his heart that if he asked a professional artist to evaluate it, they would all shout that this is Van Gogh's work, it's just that the coloring style is changed. He does not fall into Van Gogh's way of looking at life. The way of painting does not pour out suffering, despair and madness. In the place of madness there is peace, a beautiful reality, no longer a dream again. The father professor suddenly opened the door and called out, Professor Shim, so you're here, causing him to turn around in surprise. Professor Shim asked confusedly, Professor Father, what's wrong? You startled me. He said excitedly, oh my day, do you know who I just met? Professor Shim was also curious and asked, who? Professor Father cheerfully replied, I met a painter. Professor Shim was surprised, what a painter. He approached the table, displayed the painting he held in his hand from the moment he entered the room, and said, look at this painting. Hearing that, Professor Shim also came closer to observe. It was a black and white picture of a tiger. Professor Father was still excited and said, oh my god, it looks like the tiger is coming to life. Looking intently at the picture, the professor kept admiring, look at its eyes, as if it was preparing to jump out and roar for the whole world to know, right? Professor Shim's eyes widened in surprise, he couldn't believe it and silently said in thought, this skill has reached an unbelievable level. He turned to his father and said, great, is this your work? You're really a great artist. Professor Father quickly denied it, it's not mine. Professor Shim frowned and smiled smugly and asked, what, so it was a painting drawn by a former student? The father professor answered with a confused look on his face, no, it's a student who hasn't graduated from drawing school yet. Professor Shim was surprised to say, what? Then he looked to the corner of the painting and saw a small red mark there. Looking closer, I was shocked to see that on that red mark was Tae-san's name. Professor Shim's face was full of worry and confusion. He asked, Professor, by any chance? Are the other students attending the afternoon class? The professor replied confusedly, yes. He stammered and said, student, law. Professor Father suddenly asked, wait, how do you know? The two people's faces were dark, unbelievable, looking at the picture in panic and remembering the name, Jang Tae-san. Yuki blushed and asked Tae-san, what are you doing? He replied with a smug look on his face, why, law students aren't allowed to draw. She objected uncomfortably. That's not what I meant, Tae-san laughed and continued, so why do you ask? Yuki dodged and started another story, who would drink rice wine in the middle of the day like you? Tae-san calmly replied, suddenly meeting her makes him crave rice wine. She wondered, why, you drank the second pot already. Yuki looked like an older person and reminded him, you're only a first year, right? You shouldn't get drunk on the first day of school like this. Tae-san smiled and replied, but since I met you here, I have to drink, not everyone I drink with. Yuki suddenly asked in confusion. Why did you say that? Tae-san looked at her and smiled meaningfully. Yuki blushed at his words. You're really pretty, senior, makes her just say words, huh? When it was dark, in a corner of the city, surrounded by high-rise buildings and electric poles. The next day, when it was dawn, Yuki gradually woke up in a dream, feeling like a cotton blanket, a familiar scent that she had smelled before. She slowly opened her eyes, put her hand on her forehead to block out the light and exclaimed, "Ugh, my head hurts." Then she suddenly realized the surrounding scenery. Startled, sweat poured out, worriedly exclaimed in her heart, "Huh, this place is." She looked around the room and slowly realized, this room again. Yesterday's memories were fragmented in Yuki's head. Causing her to not be able to remember anything clearly, she whispered in her heart, and again. She lost consciousness. She suddenly froze, her face turned red, then she lifted the blanket and looked down to check if she was still wearing clothes or not. Seeing that his clothes were still intact, he breathed a sigh of relief and thought, how much did I drink this time? She slowly stood up and walked out of the room, still blaming herself. This was all Tae-san's fault. Who did he learn to drink like that from? Stepping out of the bedroom, right in front of Yuki's eyes appeared many paintings that surprised her and made her say, huh. Gagan's painting. She immediately recognized it when she saw it. Yuki's eyes were not yet filled with panic, her mouth was open in shock, she was sweating profusely, her heart stammered in surprise, what is this, are they all Tae-san's paintings? At Korea University College of Music. The sound of the piano was melodious. Full of depth and quiet, the young girl gently glides her hands on the piano. The combination with the piano sound of the male co-star next to her is perfect. A man in a suit sat cross-legged and said, I also have to leave early this time. That was the associate professor of the music college, Raoul Riyard. He smiled and said gently. I'm 40 years old, I miss my hometown very much. Suddenly he heard another piano sound, causing him to pay attention to it, this sound. He looked intently at Tae-san sitting on the stage playing the piano, filled with surprise and groaning in his heart, could it be Rachmaninoff? His face suddenly showed shock, he couldn't believe it and stammered, no way, why is he a freshman? The male lead's fingers gently and skillfully glide across the keys. All the students playing musical instruments stopped and listened in admiration, their skills were so great. The others also followed the sound of the piano and gradually approached. They were all amazed by Tae-san's talent, standing still wondering who he was, a genius. Back when Yuki was still at the male lead's house, she stood still in front of the pictures he drew and silently affirmed that Tae-san was a natural genius. Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind her, what do you think about my painting? At the same time, the piano sounded melodious. She turned her head to look at Tae-san in surprise and couldn't help but stammer out an answer, yeah, then I had another question in my heart, does he even play the piano? He smiled then looked at Yuki and said, if you like it, you can take it. Yuki was surprised by the male lead's words and asked again, really? She thought to herself in confusion. She couldn't believe he left Gagan's masterpiece here. At the end of the piano lesson, Tae-san stopped playing the piano and said there were a few more drawings on the drawing board. Then, with a look full of arrogance, he stood up and asked, how did you like my performance? Yuki shyly, blushed, but not at all awkwardly replied, it's perfect. There is a clear feeling of pleasure, this is the first time I've heard such a sound. Tae-san smiled softly, thanking her. She blushed and looked at the male lead in admiration, there was nothing Tae-san couldn't do, he was so cool, then she hesitantly started talking, are you preparing for a competition or what? He answered quite curtly, no, causing Yuki to stammer awkwardly, so. The male lead's sharp eyes replied, I want to apply to the piano department of the music college this afternoon, she exclaimed in surprise, what, piano department? Her whole body began to tremble because of the amount of information she was hearing. A person studying law had chosen music and arts college as a minor, her voice stammered and said, I'm going crazy. At the music college at this time, after finishing the piano piece. Everyone applauded enthusiastically. The male lead smiled softly and proudly. Those who appeared there enthusiastically applauded the excellent performance. Tae-san bowed down politely and greeted, this is the first time we met, I am Zhang Tae-san. A first-year law student enrolling today. The male lead's introduction made everyone there surprised and thought, he's studying law. Others look at him with admiration in their hearts. Tae-san is truly talented, when did he become so good at the piano? At the male lead's company, his lawyer happily exclaimed, oh, CEO Zhang, the new office setting today is very beautiful, much more beautiful than our law office. Tae-san politely replied. It's all thanks to you, Mr. Lawyer, the lawyer continued, hey, what are you talking about, people heard it and thought I didn't buy this building. Lawyer Joe looked jealous and said, I'm really jealous, CEO Zhang. Then he started asking about the main point. So why did you call me here, is there something important? The male lead replied with a questioning look, I was calling to discuss the business acquisition mentioned earlier. Lawyer Joe immediately continued, business acquisition. Tae-san laughed it off and replied, yes, I will have an interview soon. Lawyer Joe politely asked. So why do you need me? His face turned red, he was sweating profusely and said nervously. Ha, you're the director of the famous Samwoo law firm, aren't you? You have more social experience than me, so wouldn't that be better? What if we interview together? Lawyer Joe also blushed, sweating like a shower, and replied, so, you're not planning on using me as a shield, are you? Tae-san silently said in his heart, this noble old man is really quick-witted. The male lead tilted his head towards the lawyer, worriedly asking, do you accept the consulting fee? You must accept it today. He was helpless and could only agree. Okay, I understand, just kidding. Lawyer Joe with a guilty and worried look said, you have changed my life, I have to at least do this for you. Suddenly a voice rang out from outside the room. Sir, the interviewer is here. Tae-san replied, let it in. His employee's voice replied, yes. A man wearing a brown suit and leather shoes walked in. He bowed his head in the direction of Lawyer Joe and said, hello, Sir CEO, to the confusion of Tae-san and the lawyer. The lawyer laughed and said, sorry but I'm not a CEO. The man immediately looked confused at the two people, his head moving back and forth, exclaiming, ha, Lawyer Joe explained, that person is the CEO, Jung Tae-san. He was confused and worried as he watched the male lead speak. Sorry, this guy is a CEO. Tae-san looked at the tall man in front of him with a satisfied smile and thought, is a tool, a naive and honest tool. Tae-san thought to himself, it was this person. Putting aside his thoughts, he shook hands with the other man. He smiled and said, very happy to meet my grandfather, Jung Tae-san, CEO of the investment group. Looking at the man in front of him, Tae-san thought, this man devoted everything to serve Yubi in his previous life. The man looked at Tae-san with extremely surprised eyes. Why are you the CEO? Tae-san trusts this man very much. He is about 1 meter 8 tall, and has a strong shoulder to lean on. High and wide forehead. Big bright eyes, these are the eyes of a tiger always ready to capture its prey. The man shook hands with Tae-san and introduced himself. I am Han Jinwon, CEO of security company T. Tae-san smiled at him and pointed to the chair next to him. Please sit down. Tae-san went straight to his problem. It was said that because the company was on the verge of collapse, the company's workforce of 50 was now only 20. After hearing this, Han Jinwon panicked. What is this? He is so young. Tae-san smiled coldly and said, please sit down, I won't bite you so I'm not afraid. Everyone had now settled down and Tae-san spoke. Currently he was just trying to hold on with his family's assets and was in a huge debt. Han Jinwon trembled and replied, yes. Tae-san smiled, continued to say, in that situation he was in dire need of a straw to save his life. The man sitting on Tae-san's left noticed eyes staring at him and laughed and said, ha, don't look at me like that. I'm Yoon-tae, the director of Samwoo law firm. Han Jinwon said in surprise, what Samwoo law firm? Asian. Yoon-tae looked at him and smiled and continued to say, please don't have a negative view of CEO Jang. I've heard of CEO Han's talent. It's nice to meet you. Han Jinwon nervously replied, thank you. Tae-san's voice rang out, I will take over the company. Jinwon was frightened by this statement. The lawyer and Jinwon simultaneously focused their eyes on Tae-san. My heart is filled with confusion. Jinwon hesitated and said, speechless, my company has been destroyed. Even if you invest in it, you won't get any profit. Tae-san calmly replied, that's why I like it. Jinwon didn't understand. What do you mean? Tae-san said every word with finality, I put money into it not just to make a profit, but to ensure my own safety. After listening to Jinwon, if you think it would be more economical for you to hire outside security guards, the price of hiring security guards from my company is not cheap. Because they are all specially trained veterans, Tae-san laughed loudly and said, haha, I know. But I trust your every action and word so much that I decided to take over. I will take over the company and 20 employees there, including Mr. Han. Jinwon gasped in surprise, why did you have to do that? Tae-san still said coldly, immediately after signing the contract, I will give each person a 200% salary increase, paid immediately. Jinwon was startled again at Tae-san's words, were you telling the truth? Director Han doesn't have to worry, I will invest in more bow and equipment. Search equipment and upgrade supplies, what do you think? Hearing that, Jinwon cried tears of joy, thank you. Tae-san looked at Jinwon seriously and said, the job of the day is to hire as many trustworthy employees as possible, the target is 50 people this month, can we do it? Jinwon hastily replied, of course, I can do it. Director Han, I have one more request. Jinwon laughed loudly and said, please go ahead. Looking at Director Han smiling like that, Tae-san and the lawyer also felt happy. Please move the company to the 5th floor of this building immediately. Jinwon clearly. The sky is now dark, you will receive a lot of karma points. Tae-san moved the mouse in his hand and said, relax a bit. He accidentally swiped right on an article about the Ana group that was teetering on the brink. He was so pleased that his mood improved and he had to pay this journalist more. I don't know what to write that's so good. The internet is currently rife with unfavorable comments such as, the company's situation is similar to the chairman's personality, he is just a dog, the stock has dropped miserably. Tae-san read through it once and exclaimed, oh my god, he didn't eat anything and was still full. Chairman, oh, you must be so desperate right now. You receive negative karma points, Tae-san calmly said. This month everything will be fine. Looking up at the night sky, he thought about whether he should call some tutors for tomorrow's class. Is there anyone there who was good at information technology? Tae-san thought silently. The sound of applause filled with excitement rang out. Suddenly the lights in the house went out. Tae-san was confused and didn't know what the hell was going on. He called out loudly to say hello if anyone was there. From afar, light gradually appeared. Tae-san shouted loudly in fear, it was someone. Is it true that Russians or Eastern Europeans are gods? The other person only replied him with 2 words, maybe. Tae-san was confused and thought to himself, I am a god, a ghost, maybe what? Cigarette smoke drifted in the air and the man spoke, I'm waiting for you. Tae-san was startled, waiting for me. The man walked towards Tae-san. I thought you wouldn't call anyone else but me. Tae-san felt that this person didn't seem normal. In the dark, he couldn't see his face clearly, he just stood there looking at Tae-san and said. Really disappointed, hearing him say that, he replied, why did he say that? He inhaled a cigar and laughed loudly, because I have more than I thought, you are different from other mortals. His eyes sparkled with surprise. Besides him, there were people from other countries who were also communicating. Mr. Thursday came back and suddenly smiled and said to him that it's too dark here. Could you turn on the light? But he just coldly replied, I'm sick and I'll go. This is your first time doing business with someone who doesn't trust you yet. Hearing that, he silently cursed. What the fuck, why you look so arrogant? You are a god, but if you trust me, you will have more benefits in the future, right? He spoke in a sharp, stupid voice. Tae-san was surprised by his curse. Why are you cursing me for being stupid? Tae-san gradually lost all patience in saying who he really was. He replied, Bushkov Vladimir Dmitrievich. Tae-san's annoyed tone gradually became impatient. I didn't ask for your name, I needed a title. Are you in the same league as Zeus or do you work independently? If neither of the above hypotheses is true, then where do you belong? He smiled thoughtfully and said, Zeus, what's the name? That sounds boring. Tae-san was extremely worried. Oh wait, he dared to criticize Zeus. The space is dark on all sides, there is no way to offend the great minister. He seemed to remember something big. Was he a villain? He flicked the cigarette but in his hand and said, evil god, let me introduce myself properly. I am an evil god who likes bad karma the most. My name is Vladimir. Looking at Tae-san's scared face, he said, don't be afraid. I'm not like those people who only crave every human soul. He suddenly nodded, afraid to have me. He asked, how proficient do you want to be with computers? Tae-san hesitantly replied, well, knowing a little bit of this and that is fine. I don't ask too much. Haha, you're very brave. Do you understand the nature of this contract? He was made to sweat by his question and replied, no, listening to the song. He smirked and said, kind of like someone who has to deposit bad karma points. What kind of deposit? I can't believe it. The man absolutely opposite Tae-san spoke. Karma is the first condition to summon evil gods. I can only use evil karma points to exchange for skills. Your other points are also very good, but instead of depositing, you just need to give me your karma points. Hearing that, he whispered a sigh of relief. Suddenly he let out a wild laugh. The karma points were so clean and pure. Tae-san thought inexplicably, does the body also need good karma points? Tae-san crossed his arms in front of his chest and arrogantly asked for permission to criticize. He seemed to not have expected this outcome and shouted loudly, what? Tae-san looked at Vladimir coldly and said, since when do I pay attention to gods? I sincerely refused. He didn't expect him to refuse him like that, so he was stunned. He smiled contemptuously, I am Jang Tae-san, an independent person of thought. I can personally sign a contract with me with my karma points. Why don't we negotiate a bit? Vladimir agreed to his proposal. Yes, we can make a contract. I am a member of the FSB faction. The Russian Federal Security Department must call me the boss of all hackers. There is no secret organization in this world including NASA, NSA, GCHQ or MSS that can prevent me from entering this system. We even know the activation codes for nuclear weapons. He knew that if he said that, Tae-san wouldn't believe it. Vladimir used a firm tone to say, don't say too much, just trust me, I will give you the power to dominate the virtual world. You look at him, is this disrespecting your abilities? Vladimir is so angry with you. What do you mean by this name? My skills are the best at the moment, kid. Tae-san replied to him with a cold voice, do you know blockchain technology? Vladimir was surprised, what blockchain? Tae-san continued to ask, what about Bitcoin? Vladimir was now completely bewildered as to what that thing was and what else he was going to discuss. Look at him and smile, stop talking, and turn on the light, will you? How could Vladimir panic? Tae-san laughed and said, when the relationship between A and the CAF changes, people will feel more comfortable. He glared at him. Vladimir looked so funny. If I entered the world of gods, I would consider it as permission. A light soon appeared in Tae-san's hand. Looking at the glowing circle in his hand, he said thoughtfully, "This morning's sand beads are for decoration." According to the light, he went down the old stairs. He just discovered an extremely messy guy standing like a lost soul, Tae-san shouted. "What the hell is that? This is just a normal residential area." Vladimir saw everything exposed and didn't know what to do. Only then did Tae-san realize that the evil god in front of him was just a joke. He approached the boy and asked him in a cold tone how old he was. He still stubbornly denied what he meant by saying "I am a god." Seeing that he refused to tell the truth, he immediately threatened that most people, when they die, deserve to become gods, but if you don't, God will punish you. "I've already died once, so it's over." Sure enough, this threat worked and he shouted in fear, "Don't come near here." Tae-san continued to say, "What are you afraid of? I didn't hit you. If anyone sees us, they will probably think I'm the god. You look like a new soldier, right?" Tae-san repeated the question, "How old were you and when did you die?" Vladimir last growled and replied that I was 18 years old and died a month ago. Hearing the boy say that, he immediately felt how pitiful this boy was, at 18 years old. If he died a month ago, that means he was a beginner, right? "But why did you come to this place? Did you kill someone?" Vladimir still didn't raise his face and said, "No, I don't even dare to kill an ant." Tae-san continued to ask why. "Because of me, many other people were affected when I was a hacker at the FSB. I hacked their computers, I stole the list of agents and then handed it over to the organization. I have accumulated a lot of negative karma points." Tae-san also understood everything now. "Wow, so you also did a lot of bad things. Wouldn't it be better to go to hell?" Vladimir objected that not everyone can go to hell. Tae-san was confused and asked who couldn't go to hell. "This problem even I don't know someone talked about when I died." Tae-san continued to ask, "But why did he die?" Vladimir worriedly said, "I went into the president's secret account to play around but was discovered." Tae-san was surprised. "Is the president's account Putin?" Vladimir replied, "Yes." "Why did you do that? Why did you steal his information?" Vladimir hesitantly replied. "Just a little." He asked, "How much money did he get?" Hearing this, the boy smiled and replied, "About $500 million. Tae-san's sweat dropped. $500 million. $500 million is not a little. You get it so easily. How long do people have to work to save that much? Vladimir Khan feels ashamed to say he has more than $200 million in a slush fund. So there's not much in it. Tae-san's father also wondered why he was arrested after a hacker like him couldn't hide it. Talking about this, he got angry and said, "I had a friend in the same company who betrayed me. That person turned out to be a spy planted by FBS." Tae-san smiled awkwardly, "I understand, but you have so much money. How can you use it all? I didn't think he would kill someone like you. Vladimir tell you everything I invested in gifts, but then it all went down the drain. What are you surprised by after hearing this? What about the gift fund?" His voice suddenly lowered. "I put all the money in Canadian dollar escrow, but some bastards discussed it all before I could sell it. So I was left with $3 billion on paper and it was thrown away. There's no way it wasn't you who hacked into it." That's why Tae-san was stunned. Vladimir continued, "I can't do that, transaction is real time." Tae-san said with a grey face, "Just recently it seemed like I had lost all the money he sold his life to get." Vladimir coldly replied that just recently I didn't have enough money, so I hacked the president's account again. He smiled and said, "You're a good programmer, right?" Vladimir now seems to have gone all out on my hobby of developing special algorithms and the position that we have decrypted all the firewalls of important headquarters in Russia. He deliberately changed the subject and asked, "Have you eaten anything?" Seeing him mention food, Vladimir thought about his empty stomach. "Otherwise, I won't have any points left, so I'm very hungry." Looking at him so pitifully, he curiously asked, "Why isn't there another god?" Vladimir replied sadly, "There is a place where evil gods live, but they never help each other." After speaking, he burst into tears. "Please give me some points. I really hate this place, it's like hell. If I had points I would become a purer soul. Please help me." Tae-san's screaming makes his head hurt. What the hell is going on? Tae-san asked if he wanted to exchange bad karma points for good points. The sun is gradually shining. A series of stock charts appear on the computer. The company's department head reported that since this morning's trading session, the stock price has dropped miserably. A book rushed straight towards the department head along with the director's anger. "I didn't want to hear it. What the hell is that? You guys are just going to sit and watch like a scarecrow, right?" The employees were scolded by the president. "If you receive salary from the company, you have to come up with a solution. Is there any solution?" Seeing that the president was so angry, they could only bow their heads and be silent. Looking at the employees, who were all such a bunch of losers, the president slammed his hand on the table and roared, "Why is everything so chaotic? Director Choi, please say something. Can I get more support for Anna?" Director Choi was scared and said, "Our chairman has asked for a lot of support. The supervisory board has warned him, and they are complaining about the late compensation fee." The chairman calmly sat down in his chair and asked, "Captain Lee, how much money do we have left?" $200 billion, boss, the captain said respectfully. "There are still a lot of bills waiting to be paid, but I can't stand it for more than another month," the department head reported. The chairman slammed the table again. His fists clenched with veins. How are these useless guys going to handle this now? The loan limit has reached the peak, so they can no longer borrow from the bank. Public opinion is not good. Details about the debts of the finance department were also revealed. President Anna's face was now red and panting. How dare these bastards not pick up the phone? Company management is lost in thought. Large companies are also on the verge of bankruptcy. If they can no longer borrow from banks, the finance department will depend on them. And academic institutions negotiate with private bond issuers without even realizing it. Doing so is very difficult. There's something very strange about the pressure of an invisible hand surrounding you. Director Choi fell into deep contemplation. As if he had realized something, he sat and whispered, something was very strange. The president now said enthusiastically, "How about everyone, let's think of a way. Go to the bank manager and withdraw all the money that can be withdrawn. In that situation, only stocks of group companies can be sold publicly. Only physical assets such as gold and cash have value," he continued, "just need to pass this time. Do whatever it takes, just this once." At this moment, Director Choi realized something. His face changed. He thought to himself, could it be? If it was that kid, Director Choi thought while looking at the president with eyes full of shyness. After sitting and piecing together the whole incident, he thought to himself. Yes, thinking back, ever since it happened, bad things kept happening. He even imagined the scene of Jang Tae-sun smiling devilishly. Look at him. On the other side, Jang Tae-sun is saying to Vladimir, "Do you want to change the bad karma points of the evil god to the good points of the good god?" Vladimir thought to himself. In this world I can even change God's destiny. I'm crazy, what am I? Jang Tae-sun repeats again, the evil karma points of the evil god change into the good karma points of the good god. Vladimir was frightened, tears kept flowing down both sides of his face. He shouted loudly, "Brother, don't, I will do well, I really want to live like a god." There are only evil spirits here. Jang Tae-sun heard that and thought to himself. The price of not living an honest life is quite large, but, in fact, that evil karma is not Vladimir's fault alone. Her parents died early and she was raised in the intelligence department of cold Russia. The living situation caused her personality problems to arise. So what is her fault? Jang Tae-sun asked again. Do you want to change? No. Vladimir finally crouched down. Jang Tae-sun saw that and couldn't say anything. After a while, Vladimir stammered and replied, I will change. Suddenly there was a bright light, flashing from the middle of the room. This ray of light was so strong that Jang Tae-sun and Vladimir had to cover their eyes with their hands. They shouted in unison, "A." That light flashed for a while and then went out, leaving a dark scene covered with smoke. After a while, Jang Tae-sun and Vladimir slowly rubbed their eyes to see what had just happened. Only then did they suddenly realize that they had been teleported to another place. Jang Tae-sun said in surprise, What, this is," Vladimir also suddenly exclaimed. Jang Tae-sun stared blankly, not understanding what happened, and said, "Oh my god. Why did he suddenly come to the villa like this?" Vladimir thought with a wry smile. "Is it this easy and simple?" He happily said, "Wow, he has really changed into a good god." Jang Tae-sun was happy to see the other boy like that. The two turned to look at each other and smiled. Jang thought to himself that this kid is simpler than he thought. Jang Tae-sun thought that, even if he turned the kid into a good god, he still had quite a few points. It was like an investment for him. It seemed like every time an employee decided to quit, he would get quite a few points. Vladimir happily said, "Brother, thank you very much." Vladimir asked, "But how is the money you earned from this incident?" Jang Tae-sun suddenly stuttered and replied, That's right." Vladimir seemed angry and replied, Hey, what's wrong, again?" Jang Tae-sun held the can of coffee in his hand and thought to himself, "No, this isn't a level-up regression game, then what is it?" At this time, the schoolyard was full of people bustling back and forth. The other people saw Jang Tae-sun and started talking about him. "Oh god, who is that man? Is he a student?" The others also said, "It's impossible in our school, how can there be boys like that?" The female students looked at Jang Tae-sun with regretful eyes and said, "Without a karma management page, why are you lonely?" Jang Tae-sun happily said as he walked. "The romance of university that I have never experienced in my whole life, a day full of energy." Seeing the signboard that said Technical University, Jang Tae-sun hesitantly said, "Hey, that's not it." He said helplessly. The darkness shattered. Walking among the boys, Jang Tae-sun showed a clearly dissatisfied face, thinking to himself, the smell of male pharaoh. Jang Tae-sun walked for a while looking for room 302 when he finally found it. He stood in front of the door and was about to open it when he saw the door being opened by A. She came closer and took the can of coffee from Jang Tae-sun's hand and said, Coffee, thank you, I'll drink it. Jang Tae-sun looked at her with eyes full of surprise, not understanding what was going on. He looked at the woman in surprise as she slowly drank all of his can of coffee, thinking to himself, what is this? After drinking, she wiped her mouth with her hand and smiled, saying, wow, it's perfect to fuel up with caffeine. Jang Tae-sun was still surprised, his eyes widened as he looked at that girl, thinking to himself, the girls at Gondi school, more than anything, are very beautiful. Seeing Jang Tae-sun's surprised expression, she happily said, new student, I'm a fourth-year student. An-sun smiled shyly and said, I thought you were my savior, I was about to fall to the ground when you appeared. She continued, just trust me in the future, I'm a capable person. Jang Tae-sun replied skeptically, what? At this time, there was a group of people looking at the two of them with a very depressed expression. An-sun looked towards those people and said, look at the expressions of those people. Their faces are extremely jealous of you. At this moment, An-sun looked down, smiled evilly and said, as long as I'm under your command, you can live comfortably at school. How about, thank you. Seeing An-sun like that, Jang Tae-sun broke out in a cold sweat and whispered, what is that, are you drunk? She looked up at Jang Tae-sun and asked, what's your name? Jang Tae-sun was a little shy and replied, my name is Jang Tae-sun, she continued. Her name was as trustworthy as a person, let's go, my place is in front. That group of people still kept the same facial expressions as they said earlier, what about the fourth-year senior? Another person responded like that. On the other side, there were two girls who seemed to be talking about Son and Jang Tae-sun. One girl said, what's going on, why are fourth-year students coming to listen to first-year classes? The other girl replied yes, if you don't pass the course. How can you graduate? Other people saw An-sun and Jang Tae-sun together so they started talking. They look so pretty, but who is that guy, is he in the same department? They look like they are in different departments, since when is this subject in the department become a place where anyone can come in and out? Jang Tae-sun must have known everyone was talking so he just forced a smile and shyly went to class. At this time, the teacher spoke up, very happy to meet you. I am Raul Al-Sadi who will be teaching our class this semester. The goal of this semester is to help you understand how to program fluently. Hearing the teacher say that, the students' faces immediately changed. The teacher smiled and said how easy it was. The teacher continued, to program, one must be proficient in basic programming languages. The range from low to high is as wide as possible. Among the people here, if anyone wants to become a coder and then gives up, I would be very sad. Algorithms are like the cells of programming. If expressed in an Eastern style, code is external work, algorithm is internal work. Hearing this, the students froze because they did not understand what the teacher was saying. He continued, an algorithm is a set of rules for solving arithmetic problems and completing processes. Later it was classified and developed into other things such as games, web, like the recently launched iPhone. It is receiving great attention from mobile phone developers, even Jangtais, and I also don't understand what the teacher is talking about. He said, if someone here can show me his or her abilities, I will happily invite that person to my research room. Seeing On Si-yoon smirking, the teacher thought to himself, since it's fourth year, you should understand, one day and it'll be done. At this point, the teacher suddenly called Si-yoon. Making her startled and her face changed, she stammered in response, yes, yes. The teacher smiled and said, fourth-year students always have something different from first-year students. Must be fair. Her face clearly showed tension and replied, yes, 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 it should be like that. Jang Tae-san looked at her like that and was also tense. The teacher said it seemed like you were quite close to the students sitting next to you, so you two would be a group. Hearing that, both of you were startled, unable to hide the surprise on your faces. Jang Tae-san was now shyly breaking out in a cold sweat and said to the teacher, why is it you? The teacher said, from now until the end of the semester, let's work together. The two of them could only look at each other helplessly. The topic was, you two, let's program a mobile application. Hearing the teacher assign the topic like that, the student's face immediately changed. The two of them exclaimed with eyes shaped like a square and their mouths shaped like squares, application, application. Jang Tae-san broke out in a cold sweat, smiled wryly, and whispered about inventing an app, all this while. I'm not kidding myself. At this moment, images of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs appeared in Jang Tae-san's head. Thinking so, Jang Tae-san's face could not hide a shock. He began to doubt himself. Si-yoon hesitated, why, create an application? Tae-san turned to look at her confused. Then he laughed, isn't it difficult to develop applications? I already have an iPhone, but Si-yoon interrupted him, what, iPhone? Don't be rude, how can you have something that hasn't been released in Korea yet? Tae-san smiled brightly, I'm telling the truth, a friend in Hong Kong bought it as a gift for me. Anyway, it can't be used in water. He asked her, could she develop any programs? Seo-rang was shocked. What? I can anyway. Tae-san raised his voice. Why? She said again, because our country is still not allowed to use iPhones. Even if you create an application program, you must still ask for permission from that party first. He wondered if he couldn't post it like that. Seo-rang's face turned black, and there was still no such program in the country. I find this request quite difficult. Tae-san is confused. Is that so? Seo-rang turned to yell at him. iPhone is extremely famous in the business world. You don't know why. He laughed it off. Hee, that's it. She continued, she would rather use the source code to open Android, but it doesn't run very stable, because it's still not stable. Bugs appear everywhere. He smiled at her and thought, it's true that it's year 4, so there's something very different. He asked again, so, do we give up? She was startled. Of course not. If you don't pass the course, you won't be able to graduate. She can't let the professor continue to keep her in school anymore. But what are you going to do now? Seo-rang suddenly asked him. Making Tae-san startled. How what? Seo-rang smiled. If he couldn't pass the class, he would be like her and have to retake it. Tae-san smiled calmly. It's okay, anyway. This is not a mandatory subject for me. Seo-rang was surprised and said, what the hell are you talking about? This is a mandatory subject for the information technology department. If you don't pass the subject, you won't be able to graduate. The guy smiled brightly. It was just for the information technology department. Seo-rang was even more upset. What, information technology department? That is to say, you, not studying, information technology department. He smiled calmly. Yes, I did not study information technology. Seo-rang exclaimed. What? You, what do you say? You're a new student. He smiled and finished a sentence that made her stunned. Yes, I am a new student of the 8th class of law school. Seo-rang is so surprised. Science, law department. Suddenly he said to change the subject. Senior, let's drink coffee. When you have a headache, drinking coffee is the best. Seo-rang stammered. Yeah, that's good. In the school park, Seo-rang's surprised voice rang out again. What, blockchain engineering? What is that again? Tae-san answered her while drinking a can of coffee. It was a technique to prevent double payments using peer-to-peer network. Seo-rang was even more surprised. Hey, what did you just say? Peer-to-peer is illegal. Tae-san still calmly answered her question. It is understood that it is a popular payment transaction storage technique in the future. It's hard to understand. Payment transactions. In the future, will peer-to-peer be a popular technology in the future? She looked at Tae-san in confusion and thought, my major is cybersecurity. Yet he always says things that I hear but don't feel anything. Network users don't trust each other, Tae-san explains, and that's how application networks control payment transactions. Seo-rang retorted, don't talk so funny. That technique is impossible. Tae-san interrupted her, as far as I know. It is expected to be announced this fall. Seo-rang couldn't believe it. What, really? He continued, proof of work scheme, consensus algorithm, the specialized terminology of the information technology department comes from the mouths of law students. Seo-rang couldn't understand, the payment system of the future. Who is he? Seo-rang asked him confusedly, why did he exchange this information with her? This is an unpublished technique. He calmly said that even if his seniors tried to research and develop, they would not be able to follow suit until death. She immediately got angry. What, you look down on me? Tae-san calmly explained that it was reality. To be able to use and realize this technique, one must be a numerical genius and understand special algorithms. Is the senior capable of doing that now? Seo-rang could not refute. He continued, isn't your major in cybersecurity? Seo-rang laughed. That's right, I don't know about the other things but I have knowledge of network security programming and firewalls. He laughed. In other words, he's like a white hat hacker. I know a great security program. Do you want to try it? Seo-rang was startled. What, isn't that illegal? He calmly replied, for hackers, isn't the most important thing to overcome the firewall. Seo-rang countered, hey, but if you do that, your profile will be red, you know. Your parents are just normal people, they can't bear your mistakes. I just want to live peacefully and not do anything illegal. Tae-san interrupted her. Senior. She got angry again. Why, she still has to get married. Smiled. What if you could take responsibility for my life? Seo-rang was shocked. What are you talking about? His words made her both scared and unbelievable. In that situation, just with those words, not only me but everyone will be mentally disturbed. On a girl who always acts cool, but standing in front of a man like that, she is forced to fall in love. At this time Tae-san was driving Seo and Yuri. He asked her, Senior, you didn't come by car, right? Seo and Yuri smiled. Today I plan to go home by taxi. He smiled and thought, so he wanted to drink. Just now she was a senior at Gongdae school, now she's a senior at art school. Fortunately, I have not yet received any additional negative karma points from these types of actions. Sitting in the car. Yuri said in a reproachful tone. All this time she thought she couldn't make an appointment with him. If I make a girl hold a grudge to the point of frost falling in the middle of May, I will definitely receive a pile of karma points, but I have to act carefully. He immediately pleased her. Senior, please come with me today. That evening the full moon shone brightly. A voice rang out. The night's consultation asked for permission to begin. Please everyone return to your seats. The people present their all war hoods and seriously followed instructions. Everyone looked quite serious. There were 10 people on the round table. The atmosphere looked very solemn. One of them spoke up. It took 10 years for all of us to be here together like this. God bless us all. Everyone speaks in unison, hoping that all believers will always be with us. Someone continues. It has now been 486 years since we were humiliated and robbed of that island. In 1912, the island was reclaimed from the hands of the Catholics, but that humiliation remained over the years, flows in the flesh and blood of the Knight's brothers. All must not be forgotten. Everyone spoke in unison again. The hatred had seeped into their blood and could not be erased. The person just now continued. Later I will explain the reason for summoning everyone. Rutten, please speak. The person named Rutten spoke up. Recently in the East, I discovered unusual movements. Heaven and Earth Assembly and those who worship the ferocious snake seem to be busy searching for something. Another person interrupted. What is that thing? Rutten replied. I don't know. This is a secret action, so I still cannot determine what their goal is. According to the information I have, it seems they are looking for someone. Another person asked, what kind of person is that? The person named Rutten continues, apparently the legendary heir of a family that covers all 3 Middle Eastern countries, Korea and Japan. The person who first spoke up, do you mean the descendant of destruction? Suddenly outside the door there was a flock of crows flying around, making everyone in the room angry. It was really noisy. That person continued, don't waver, don't forget, our first goal is to destroy the descendants of this envoy. The rest of the believers said in unison, we have not forgotten. That person continued in a low voice, in the past, we have gathered those who serve the Holy Grail into an alliance. The sole goal of the Holy Knight Order is to protect the sincerity of the followers of God. The children are descendants of the abandoned people who sparked the economic war. We must crush their plot to break their alliance. First we will join hands with the Heaven and Earth Association like in the past. I intend to use a marriage contract instead of an alliance agreement. What do people think? Another person spoke up and we agreed. The other man continued, then. I will speed up the plan. I will let my adult son, married to the daughter of the leader of the Heaven and Earth Assembly group, for the Holy Grail. Change the scene to another place. In front of the structure chart screen Tae-san muttered, the market seems to be quite gloomy and this seems to be my opportunity. It's like the last act of the festival, everyone is in a hurry. Tae-san looked at the computer thoughtfully, as if he was seeing the virtual currency bubble that had changed the world. On the 16th the investment bank Bear Stearns will go bankrupt and merge with Morgan. And it will be $2 a week. There was a time when Joe, who once ordered the world including Wall Street, failed and everything collapsed. In a cold world like this, losers end up the same. I need to be more cold. They are just numbers on a screen that most people cannot touch. A capital amount that no individual can dream of is circulating in the palm of their hands. While everyone is busy thinking of ways to get out of this situation. That is how cold and decisive people will win. The amount of slush funds hidden in tax evasion is $32 trillion, which is still not enough. Compared to them, I'm just a baby bird. Now I'm only the size of a bucket of water inside a water tank. And there's a limit to how much money I can use. I don't have anyone to trust 100%. I always have to be vigilant with everyone. Because you don't know when the enemy will appear and engulf you. The exchange rate and stock markets created by humanity are being manipulated by invisible hands, this invisible hand force, transferring a huge amount of money. To the point where I can't grasp it. After a while, Tae-san smelled the scent of coffee and exclaimed. The scent was so fragrant. The woman brought coffee to the man standing next to her and asked. Director, today is a day off at school, he replied. Yes, I have changed the classes to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The assistant laughed, how envious, when I was in college I was already struggling to prepare for a job. He teased her back, so is it unfair to her now? She laughed, no, that's not what I meant. Then she asked about something else. Director, was the date fun? He laughed, let's see. The assistant laughed, you don't have to lie, how can a handsome guy like the director leave the girls alone? Guys always mistakenly think that it's not the guy who comes to seduce the girl, it's the girl who has already tacitly agreed to it. That means the woman will be more active. Tae-san smiled at her. Then he asked, is the working environment good? The assistant was happy, yes, I didn't expect anything more. Suddenly the phone rang, he picked it up and said hello, the other end laughed loudly. Director, are you still okay? He happily replied, yes, Director Huang. I still live very well here. Huang asked him if he was busy tomorrow. The candidate interview date that I mentioned before has been scheduled to take place tomorrow. Tae-san asked again, interviewing candidates. Then he happily shouted loudly and approved. Scene changed to a certain house. Inside the house, son Yuri kept looking at the phone thoughtfully. Her mother, who was next to her, couldn't see anymore, so she spoke up. Her phone was about to be punctured, waiting for her boyfriend. Yuri thought to herself, what kind of boyfriend? She said in a long, evasive voice, Mom, I really have a talent for painting. Her mother was confused. What are you talking about? You are the top of the Korean University's art department, isn't this enough proof? Look at the wonderful pictures hanging in your room. Even if it were hung for an exhibition in a gallery, it would still sell for a high price. The girl interrupted her mother. That's not what I drew, someone gave it to me. Her mother was startled. What? Who gave it? Could it be the professor? She calmly replied, unfortunately, the school's professors don't have that much strength. Her mother was even more surprised. So who is it? Yuri hesitated. Yes, such a guy. Scene changes to a corporation. A supercar crashes in front of the door. The staff stood in 2 rows to respectfully greet. The director is here, we will guide you inside. Entering the parking lot, Tae-san opened the door and got out of the car. He stood waiting for the elevator with an extremely arrogant expression. After waiting for a while, the elevator arrived. Meanwhile, in the interview waiting lobby, the loudspeaker announced, quickly line up, we will be interviewed in order. Tae-san stood right at the door, watching the chaotic scene in the lobby and burst into tears. Oh my god. There were 2 girls among those waiting for the interview who were chatting. One asked, can I wear makeup? The other person replied, of course, you look very pretty today. Another guy complained, heck, I couldn't sleep yesterday so I'm not in a good mood today. Someone comforts you, it's okay, you'll do well, just trust me. Tae-san stood looking at this scene and sweated, thinking, it's no different from the chaos and the goblins. Suddenly someone shouted. Kang Ho-yoon, he was startled. What, Kang Ho-yoon? An unremarkable short-haired girl in the crowd raised her hand. Yes, Tae-san was also shocked when he saw the girl. Oh my god, why is the person who plays the female lead in the Goblin TV series here? And there, the boy looking over there was June of Myri Boys. Tae-san could only smile wryly looking at the chaos before his eyes. Suddenly someone called out to you, are you here for an interview? Tae-san turned around in surprise. Yes, was a blonde-haired boy wearing a black scarf covering half of his face. That boy came before his eyes and said, don't stand there stupidly and go get the votes. Tae-san was speechless. Ah. The guy continued to ask, are you so handsome, a singer, or an actor? These questions made him not know how to answer. No, me. The other guy continued to laugh. He looked a bit old. He must be an actor. He was very handsome. I made the boys present here in squids. He laughed. Ha, you came alone. The boy replied, yes. He continued asking, are you a singer? The boy continued to happily answer, nodding, seeing that he was a singer. I'm Raehyek, the future idol. I don't understand, is it a stage name? The boy was a bit surprised. Oh, can you see, my real name is Dongjun, Ma Dongjun?